Here's a Simulink model which measures light intensity and proximity by way of two different sensors on the Mini-Q robot, the photosensor and the IR sensor. Right now both of these are running in external mode, so the readings on the displays are dynamic. You'll see that for the proximity sensor it's 0, and as I move my hand in, then the display raises to 40 potentially. So what we're really going to want to explore here though is the light intensity values and what they mean. Um, when there's just room light, I guess that's the way to describe it, ambient light in my room right now, the display reads about 415. But if I move my hand over to the right side of the robot, so I'm covering up a good amount of light there, what's happening is it drops. So it's going down to 50 or so. Now if I do the opposite on the other direction, you'll notice that there should be a significant jump up to about 960. So what happens is depending on where the most light is and where there's the least amount of light, let's say on the left side, there's an object on the left side, then the value would go up very high, and vice versa, low for the right sensor. Alright, so in this Simulink model called Lights On and Darkness, the photosensor's readings are being passed through a MATLAB function. If you follow the arrows, you'll see that from the light intensity output, it goes directly to an input in the function called light or lit. I know it's not L-I-G-H-T, it's L-I-T-E. That's the name I've given it, the input to my function. So let's double click into the function now to explore what lit does. Lit is our input, and in our function we've created it so that there are three outputs, red, green, and blue. Perfect for our RGB LED, which needs that many inputs to work. We have our control structure. If lit is bigger than 970, then what's going to happen is red is going to output a high value of 255, while green and blue output 0. Else, what's going to happen is blue will output the highest value. So given the light in the room, your Mini-Q robot will shift between showing a red color or a blue color. That's exactly what this code expresses. So here we are with a Simulink model, light turner, which causes our Mini-Q robot to turn in a particular direction when a light threshold is reached. So let's explore this a little further. We first have the photosensor up here from the Mini-Q library, which outputs some type of light intensity. If you really want to read about it, you can click into it here. But so that output gets fed into a chart and is assigned the variable name lit, L-I-T-E. Let's click into the chart now to see what happens. So first you enter into the system, and that entry point is represented by an arrow which doesn't come from any visible location. It's just like a little ball up there. Going into our stop state, where both the variables L and R are 0. Now we have two different states it could potentially go to right now. Now one of them is it would go left so long as the lit value is less than 30. You can see it right there. In this case, what would happen is we would move into the left state where L goes at a negative 200 direction, R goes at a positive, causing the robot to turn. As soon as the light value goes above 30, it moves back into the initial stop state, and we have a similar pattern of motion according to light with a right turn. However, that is dependent upon the lit value being higher than 800. Otherwise, if it drops to a value less than 800, it'll go back to the stop state. So really depending on light on the right or left side of the Mini-Q robot, if you remember how the light sensors work, to either extreme means one side is getting more light than the other. So we should have a robot which turns left or right depending on which side you cover up with your hand, or if you had a flashlight, something like that. So run the model, see what happens. So this is my DarknessFollowBot code, and what I've tried to do with this Simulink model is create a robot that follows your hand around, because Your hand casts a shadow onto the robot, and with two light sensors on the right and left side of the mini-Q, we can figure out directionality as to where it should turn. If we're trying to get it to follow your hand, bump into it, or even kiss it. So what it also uses is the proximity sensor, because I don't want the FollowBot, its motion, to be running all the time. I only want the whole following behavior to happen when maybe my hand is within 2 centimeters or so from the IR sensor, and then also factoring in the light values. So let's go into the chart and take a look at what this robot involves. Its entry point into its behavior is the stop state, where L and R, the output variables, are 0. So the motors, if we look back again, take in L and R outputs as the actual speeds, and in this case they're 0, so they're not moving. If our hand gets closer to the mini-Q, though, it moves into the whole forward state. So prox is bigger than 30. That value, I'll tell you right now, means that my hand's getting closer to the front. It's going to start going forward. And here in the forward state, we have two directions it could go. It could go either left or it could go right, perhaps even just stay on its course of forward. But the situation where it would go left is when the light value drops below 40, and you can see that there's this arrow going in, and then here we have an entry or exit going back as soon as the light value raises above 40, so it should stop after that. What we also have on the other side is if the light value is bigger than 400, the mini Q is going to go right. Otherwise, if it's less than 800, which it's a little bit of a confusing pattern, but it's worked for me in the video you're going to see in a second, it's going to move back to forward. Let me tell you right now, this is a work in progress, so feel free to change some of the values. You could probably improve upon what I've created here as the DarknessFollowBot. But an important thing to note is between each of these states, right and left, I do have a condition for when it would return back to stop, and I always encourage you to consider that. For if I was just to move my hand away completely, I'm going to want the robot to stop. Therefore, this long arrow moving back, where the condition for movement is proximity being less than 2, meaning nothing's in front of it, the robot should just stop.